Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our November 2014 customer webinar. On the first Thursday of each month, we like to take a little bit to tell you about the cool things you might have missed and give you a sneak peek at what's coming up. Today, though, it's all about what's coming up because we have a new version of BLOX CMS that's tentatively scheduled for release next week. We get excited about every new release of BLOX because our development team is always pushing the envelope with new features and innovations. But this release is really cool because they bundled in a ton of features that your editorial staffs will love. We're making it really easy to change how your stories, collections, and images display, allowing for a much more interactive storytelling experience. We're making it easier to precisely select the items you want to appear in blocks. And we're making it faster and easier to share your content and pull in third-party content to your site. Christine Masters, our Director of Project Management, will walk you through all of these new features. In the room also are Mark Wilson, our CEO, Gary Sesnicki, Regional Sales Manager, Paige Ruba, Marketing Specialist, and I'm Aaron Gillette, TOWNNEWS.com's Director of Marketing. Today's agenda, as I said, we're going to walk you through what's new in blocks. We've got new presentation modes for articles and collections, new query rules to offer you more control over how your block content displays, and syndication tool results are easier to pull in as full assets in the content management system. We have a big group and we have a lot to cover, but we're going to try to burn through our formal presentation in about 30 minutes, after which time we'll take questions. At any point during the presentation, you can type a question into the chat box, but we'll hold off on answering them until the end of the show. That's it for my spiel. I'm going to hand the mic to Christine now to walk you through all these new features.
Great, thank you. As Aaron said, this is one of the biggest webinars I think we've had in a really long time, so apparently everyone's as excited about this as we are. We think there's some really cool stuff in here, and we are really looking forward to seeing what you guys do with this. So we've been talking to people a lot over the last several months, and a lot of newsrooms are looking for more ways to do kind of storytelling and to increase traffic and really do presentations of articles that are really easy to create. So we've been looking for more ways to do that and to really kind of help you out in the newsroom to do this cool stuff but still be able to make your deadlines. One of the ways that we are looking to do this is by something called presentation modes. We actually had presentation modes previously on our image assets. You might remember they were within the other tab, and then you kind of had to scroll down a little bit and it said presentation modes, and we had things like a showcase mode that makes the image really big, and panorama where you can kind of slide back and forth on a 360-degree image. So there's some really cool stuff there, but it was kind of all hidden behind the other tab. We're actually bringing that out now to the front page, so also on image assets it will now be on the front page and easier to use. And we're also adding new presentation modes and new designs to articles and collections. So on articles, you can see here on the screenshot, down here is where the presentation mode will be. And you can actually choose now from none, which will be the standard implementation that you're used to on an article page, or long form, which is really a detailed story presentation, and I'll show you that in just a second. So long form, I mean, people, especially journalists, obviously should be familiar with this kind of mode of journalism, which means, you're doing more storytelling. We really tried to make use of inline assets so that you can really drag the photos and videos into the place of the article where they're most relevant, and create kind of a full presentation on the story page. And then there's another one called personality, which basically just highlights the author at the top of the page, and you have to specifically be using the author tied to a user asset. And that will just have the author and their avatar and their bio showing up at the top of the page. This is good, obviously, for opinion pieces or for blogs or things like that, where the author is one of the centerpiece of is their opinion or their story, that kind of thing. So here's an example of long form. So this is, a lot of people have been asking for this kind of thing, really showing an in-depth article. It's going to be a longer article probably, with a really cool headline on it. It's kind of centered at the top. one of the most important things you'll notice, and this is very important for the newsroom especially to understand this, that we actually remove the right rail of the article during this presentation, including the ads. If you have, ads specific to that section or other type of promotional content, we're actually removing that right rail to really focus on the story. In exchange for those ads, we do have a new ad spot that is specific to this article presentation called in-story long form, that obviously before you use this, you would probably want to set that up. You can put an existing advertiser in there, or what I would recommend is selling it as a new spot and maybe having a really big, 900 by 300 ad size, kind of like a sponsorship position that you could sell just to either this particular article or to this particular type of article for this section. You can do, for example, let's say that this is a story about startup t-shirts, I think, and if you wanted to have a t-shirt store that's in your area, just do a sponsorship for this article, you can actually use our keyword option in the banner ad system to target just to this specific article, and you can have a sponsorship just for this specific article with no other ads interfering. So it's kind of a really cool setup. In addition, like I said, the photos actually show up 100%, so they're going to be really large and really dominant on the page. And if you pull them in line, it'll be a nice display all the way down the page, lazy loading each of these large images across the full width of the page. So it's a really nice display. If you don't do if you don't do inline assets and pull the images in line with the story, it will show a little mini right rail, but it still doesn't show any of the other content that's inherited from the front page or those associated ads. So we're really excited about this, and I'd like to see what you guys do with this. So feel free to send me an email if you guys use this and have some good examples, because we think that there's going to be some and it's really easy to set up too, so that it'll be a lot of fun. Now on to collections. We have a bunch of new presentation modes for collections as well. A collection, as you know, is an asset that is actually a container filled with other asset types. They can be videos, photos, other stories, all those things. So what we've done is we've created alternate ways to display those groups of assets. So first off, we have a mapped presentation. This means that you're just taking all of the items that are in the collection that have location information on them. So this is set in the other and then location tab of that particular article. So make sure they all have locations. And then they'll be mapped with a map at the top and then a list of the assets down below. This will be cool to do things like, the top 10 most dangerous intersections in the area. You can have like a little profile on each one with a picture, and they can be articles, and they can all have a location on them and be mapped on a map of the area. You can do, best restaurants and then have a preview article about them. There's a bunch of different things that you can do, and I'll obviously map those onto a map. Then we have something called the paging gallery, and this is really cool because you can do images or videos or articles, which is cool, and it'll actually create a kind of a paging. You kind of click on it and it flips to the next page. This is great for, top 10 funniest things that the state senator said, or the different stories that you're doing about the best photos, or all those types of things. There's a bunch of things that you can do with this. These are great traffic generators. And then we have another one called series. The series is basically where you're going to show any type of, you're doing 5 different stories about a specific topic. You can collect them all together. It'll show a listing of those topics and then relate them together on the article page itself. I'll show you an example of that in just a second. And then lastly, we have timeline, and the timeline actually takes the starting time of each of the assets and maps it across the timeline that you can drag back and forth. This is really cool because, if you have a new grocery store opening, you can have different stories that happened at different points in time throughout the construction process up to the opening, and you can drag the back in time to see photos or to see articles about during the time that the grocery store was being created, for example. So there's a bunch of really cool stuff you can do, and it's extremely easy to put them together. You just kind of click on the thing, find the assets, drag them around into the order that you want, select the presentation, and then that's it. Here's an example of what the series looks like. And the cool thing about this, again, is that you drag and drop them to reorder them within the collection. Then the collection page itself will be a listing of the articles with a number, the articles or photos or videos, with a number next to them for the order that they're in. But most importantly, on each of the collection, of each of the stories or photos or videos within the collection, they actually show the numbered, and you can see at the top here, the numbered related articles from the series. So from the child article itself, you can get to all of the other children of that collection. So it's a really nice way to tie them together. This little series promotion shows up at the top of the asset page regardless if it's a video or a photo or a story, as long as it's a child of that collection. So it's a really nice way to relate those together. And this particular one is an example of, this is both a collection, so this particular article is in a collection that is a series, but it's also a long form article. So some of these things actually, because of the fact that it's a collection and an article, they might overlap, and they both can work together. So this is a really quick example of the timeline, and you can see down here, this is actually an interactive timeline. You can drag it back and forth. You can click on the various events within the timeline and see the article related to them. And this is what it looks like, obviously with your map at the top, and then all of the stories or videos or photos down below. So this is the next thing. This is an example of something that we've been talking to people about for a really long time, where a lot of people have asked for ways to really, especially in some slideshows and kind of the top stories of the day, they really want to promote their photojournalism and the really great photos that their photographers are taking, and they want to make sure that their top slideshow of the day really showcases photos and stories that have photos. But it's kind of hard to do that, if you're kind of in an automated process, and it might not be as easy for you to select manually only the top stories that have photos. So in this case, we have a new query rule that actually allows you to set, as a query rule for that block, to only show articles that have previews. And it doesn't go just for articles, it goes for photos or videos or collections that actually have a preview assigned to that asset. The article page obviously goes off of whether or not it has a child that has a preview, and that's how it can show in that particular query rule. So, I mean, this is really awesome, and like I said, a lot of people have been asking for this over the years, that we've finally been able to figure out a way to provide this. I will say that, and you can see there's kind of a little triangle here. This is a warning that basically tells you that only new assets have this capability. So it has to be saved after the software comes out so that it has this property that's indexed and they can find it. But you'll for the first day, this might be a little sketchy, but after things get saved and after things are created, once the software comes out, you'll notice that that little triangle will go away, and everything will have this property available so that you can set this up. So you might want to wait a couple days before using this. But again, I would highly recommend that if you're interested in making sure that your slideshows or some of your top story blocks on your front page or whatever are always showing an image, you can set this property and you'll be able to choose to only show content that has an image associated with it, and you'll be able to make sure that that slideshow only showcases that image. So it's really fun. The next thing, and this is a little bit more difficult to explain, and I will try to give you a little bit of the background on this so it makes better sense, but when BLOX originally came out, I was really excited about the idea that you don't actually have to tie content to an article to use it throughout the site. We don't have any kind of specialized recognition of the article as a main asset type or as any kind of a special asset type. Technically, if you wanted to put a video or a photo as breaking news on the site, you could. The problem that we have is that a lot of people have, the sports photo that's associated with the main story also might have a sports section tag on it, and then you'll have examples where the sports story and its child photo show up right next to each other in the flow of news on your site because they're both section tagged there, and then you kind of get things that end up looking like duplicates. So what we usually do on sites is we filter all of our blocks by stories only, just so that we don't get that duplication. But then it's not as cool because then you can't put videos and other stuff within the flow of your news unless it's attached to an article. So what this does is this is a new query rule that basically allows you to set items that have or do not have a parent as one of the rules in that block. So you can say to only show assets that do not have parents. So this means that any of the children, things that are children of any other asset, you can filter those so they do not show in this particular block. So that means that you can get rid of that show articles only filter and then change it to show only assets that are not children. That means that you can put videos, table assets, photos, anything you want within the flow of your news without having to have those duplicates. So it's a really cool thing, and I would really advise people to go look at their query rules and see if there's a place where you could use that. Anyone have anything to add at this point to those? Those are really cool. Okay, so this is the third thing that this is a really big release, as you can tell. There's a lot of really cool customer-facing things we have. You're probably familiar with our syndication tool. This is something that we've had, I don't know, a couple months ago it came out, I think. It seems like it's probably a year ago, but I know. Yeah. I can never remember the exact times. But it's relatively new as far as the software we have. And this allows you to set up essentially a channel between different block sites or different types of YouTube is also a channel possibility, or an RSS feed. And you can actually, it's similar to our editorial application where you can see a list of all of the articles there, and then you can pull from that other site or from that hub site any of the assets that you want directly into your site. So it's just a really great way of sharing content. We've actually had a lot of, especially groups, where they'll actually set up a sharing hub between all of their sites so that they can share content. I think we have a lot of CNHI people on the call today, so thank you for coming. And they're actually using this to share some of their best content between all of their sites. And they have a hub set up. They contribute content that's highlighted to the hub, and then other sites can actually pull from those that individual hub site either the entire feed from the hub site or special individual articles as they choose from that hub. So it's pretty exciting. What we're doing in this particular upcoming software release is we're actually integrating the syndication tool inside of the editorial tool. I think that this is an amazing new feature because it really makes the syndication tool and those articles more in reach with the editorial team. So instead of, if you wanted to find some additional photos or additional articles about the election or maybe about a storm that's coming up, instead of having to go into the syndication tool, find them, organize them, pull them in, you can actually do that from directly within the editorial tool. You don't have to go off to syndication to pull them in. You can just click on, this is an example of within the editorial tool, you can click on new asset, and then down here as one of your options for where you can get those content, you can actually pull from the syndication, and then that pulls up the actual syndication search while you're still inside of editorial. So you don't actually have to switch applications or go anywhere else. You're actually able to search, find, and tie together any kind of content from within any of your syndication channels. So here's an example where, let's say I went to an article, and then from within the article, I can click on something like a new child. So I'm going to add new child-related content to my article. Syndication is also an example of some place where you can pull to find children of an article as well. So let's say I've said I'm going to add some more children. I can pull up the syndication tool from within editorial. I can click over here to choose one of the syndication channels. I might have many syndication channels set up. I can choose the channel, select the news that I want to add. I can do a search, then select the news that I want to add to my article. At any time, you can actually add them to the site, and then they come into a queue that's over here. And this queue is the queue that you're going to organize before you pull onto that particular asset as children. So I can come into multiple channels, select a couple things, pull it into the queue. After I've organized it and section tagged it and got it all set to go, at the bottom I can click Add to Asset, and then all of those items are now added as children to my story. So it's it's really easy to integrate your syndication channels with your stories as part of your normal newsroom workflow. So that's really exciting. We would really encourage people to look at the syndication tool to kind of do content exchanges within their organization, especially if you have more than one more than one paper together. You should really have some kind of channel to share articles back and forth. If you're not familiar with the canonical tag, this is a new thing that has come up with different search engines, and they now recognize the source of who actually wrote that article, and will flag the canonical link back to the original source who wrote that article and who published it. And even though the article might be running full on one of your sister sites, it's giving a canonical link back to the original source site, and Google gives you all the page rank for that article as it's running on all these other pages, and you get the Google juice back to your particular site. So it really helps with page rank and with getting traction and SEO for those particular articles. So it's a great way to share content and then to generate additional page views and ad impressions on all of your sites together. So if you have any questions or any thoughts about ways to use, or ideas you have for content exchanges, we're really interested in hearing some of your ideas, and we'd like to hear more about, if you have an idea for, a wine exchange, or maybe a military news, or maybe a college news type content exchange, and you think that we or you might be able to help organize that with multiple papers, we would be interested in hearing those kind of ideas, and we'd like to see, our customers really be successful sharing this content and really maximizing the use of all this really good content that all of our different sites are creating. Any other?
You want to talk about the carry-along ad?
Sure. One of the really cool ideas that we're working on to help promote the content exchange is the idea of, we're experimenting with the idea of putting an actual remnant ad on the content that gets sent out to other sites, but that remnant ad is actually tagged back to the source site. So that means that you put out an article about a new kind of tractor. It goes out to 5 different ag sites. The actual article runs in full on those ag sites throughout the country. The ad that runs on those articles was actually contributed back to the source site. So you get they get the page views, they get the other ad views that are on their site from all of their page views, but that one ad actually gets flagged back to you, and you get remnant traffic for that. So that's a really great way to get page views and ad views to the destination sites, but then also Google juice and, again, ad views back to the source site. So that's another thing. If you're interested in that type of thing, we're starting to experiment with that, and we really think that that's another way to again, get traffic out there and to get ad views for everybody involved. Did that explain it? Okay. Yeah, it's a really cool, and again, just let me know what ideas you have and we can kind of help you vet those out and see, better ways to use this tool, because it's very cool and we're really focusing on ways to integrate this and make it easier to use.
And if they want to set up a hub site, they should give their sales rep a call, and
Yep.
we can get a hub site set up for them.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do content exchanges. You can do direct exchanges between just a couple of papers where we set up a channel between two papers, or we can set up a hub site for a group, and then everyone pushes articles to that group, to that one hub site, and pulls them down to their site from that hub site, which is a little bit easier if you're talking about connecting between more than, let's say, 3 different papers. So it's pretty sophisticated stuff, and it's really, like I said, a great way of sharing content. We have so much good general content that can be used in many different places that still, might be staying on your site. And we really think that getting that content out into the wild while still giving you benefits back as the creator is a great idea. So let us know if you have any thoughts or ideas about content exchanges that you might be interested in, and we can help you kind of vet those up and maybe set them up.
Yeah, we want to make sure that this information is getting to the people who need to know it. So there are a number of ways to stay connected with us. Our documentation site. Actually, Christine's going to show the release notes for these new features on the Docs site. If you go to docs.townnews.com, and then can you show them where they need to go?
There's a CMS button here in the left-hand side, and you click on Software Release Notes, and then it'll have one for November 2014. This right here is the 119 software release, which is when all this fancy stuff comes out. Again, we're hoping for next week, but we put the release notes out early so that you guys can, if you want super detailed, step-by-step information about all of the stuff I talked about today, we'll have tons of information in the release notes here.
And you can actually sign up to receive those release notes in your inbox as well. If you go to townnews.com, click on News, and then in the upper right-hand corner, there's a Stay Connected box that lists all of our email newsletters that you can sign up for. We have a monthly newsletter where we discuss tips and tricks and various other news. We have software release notes and service advisories. Your technical staff will probably want to be signed up for that one. Webinar announcements, so you can keep up to date on these and other webinars, and then also training department announcements. So make sure your folks are signed up for those lists. As always, you can call support. You can reach us on our support line or at support.townnews.com. At community.townnews.com, we have a customer community. It's a great place to share ideas. Actually, as you start using some of these features, some of the new presentation modes, if you want to go to the community site and share what you're doing with presentation modes or syndication or any of these new features, sharing the community site's a great place to share that information with your colleagues. And of course, you can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
And then remember too, I don't know if you said this, but this particular webinar happens every Thursday at 10:30.
Yep.
Every first
Thursday.
Every
Thursday of the month.
Thursday of the month. Thursday is a month.
And we will record the webinar, and the webinar will also, it'll be posted to the website, and it will also be included in the news, in our monthly newsletter, the townnews.com bulletin. So if you're signed up for the newsletter, you will receive a copy of the webinar along with the next newsletter, which should go out next week. So you can watch it right in line in the newsletter. It's quite cool. With that, I think we'll move on to the questions. We actually have quite a few questions to work through here. So let's start with the oldest first. Bob Rose asks, will these presentation mode choices be available to users in TCMS? In BLOX Total CMS.
Yeah, I wrote this down as one of the things I should mention,
Yeah.
and I don't think I mentioned it. But a couple of caveats, I guess, to this. Total CMS is on a couple of releases behind of the hosted side. So this will be coming to Total CMS, but it's going to be a couple more.
You might explain what that is for some people.
Total CMS is our, what, you don't want to talk about it? I might not say it as concisely, but Total CMS is our editorial system where the editorial newsrooms actually use Total CMS to write and manage their content, which is then pulled into Adobe InDesign through a plugin.
For print.
So it
print.
allows you to
Thank
create
you.
your print edition at the same
Correct.
time you create your website and mobile edition.
Right. It's a really cool. I mean, it's essentially one system that works together to both build your print and build your online site. But this is because of just to make sure that everything is really vetted and stable. We do release a couple of versions behind on the Total CMS product. So this will be coming, but it will be another couple months before that comes. And also to mention that the collection presentation modes and things like that don't have any real special presentation on the Touch 5 product. These will be collections and they do show up on the Touch 5, but they might not have a special presentation, mostly just due to the size of mobile screens and the type of technology, Flash or jQuery that we're using for those. So we're looking at ways to maybe do a couple of things that's special for Touch 5, but that will be in future versions.
Okay. Patrick Smiley asks, do the photos now have the ability to word wrap? I'm not exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably talking about inline photos maybe. And I think for inline photos, what we're doing, it basically does the same thing if you're using inline photos in a normal presentation mode. But if you're in, I'm trying to see an example here. This is an example of the long form presentation mode. And if you're in the long form presentation mode, the photos will just be full width in the bottom. Full width throughout the page at the appropriate spot.
Okay. Do related content boxes work with the new presentation modes?
They do work with them in that they will show up somewhere on the presentation. For long form presentation mode, they'll show up in the mini rail, which will be on the right hand side. Again, it's not the normal rail that'll have content from the front page and the ads, but it'll just be content from this particular story. They will show up there. We are trying to work on, for a future release, it's a little bit harder than I had hoped to do this, but we would really like in the future to be able to drag related content in line, but that is not available yet. We are hoping to do that for the future. So as of right now, it will just, if you do like a pull quote or something, it will show up in the mini rail on the right. It won't be able to be dragged in line.
Okay. Jackie Gray asks, can we have nice, large, full-size images inline on regular presentations that don't have a presentation mode selected?
We can't do that right now because of the ads and the photos and stuff that show up next to, they're floated inside of the actual article. What ends up happening is that because that, we call it the media box is showing up inside of the article, you can't actually, we have to make everything be 300 pixels wide because it could show up next to that article rail, and we don't want to have things overlapping. That's one of the reasons why we did this, is that we actually got rid of that inner rail and we got rid of the right rail so that we can make those photos full width. But you have to use this mode, and it has to be, so that you get that full article presentation so that we can make those full size for you.
Greg Wood asks, will we be able to target in-story ads to the article via a keyword using DFP ads?
It depends on how your DFP is set up. If you're doing DFP through Ad Manager, then yes. If you're doing DFP itself, we would have to look at that. We should be able to do something because we have a special spot there, but you'd probably have to override that spot depending on how your DFP was set up. You probably have, if you have all of our ads overwritten with the DFP ads, you'd have to do the same thing with this ad spot. So if you're using DFP, that's something that you might want to submit like a support ticket on and say like, we're interested in using this new ad spot. How do we get you set up on DFP? And we'll have to look at how your DFP was implemented and do something similar. It's a good question.
Kristen Finney asks, is there a way to add a flag or notification on the main page that an article is long form to let readers know?
That is a good question. What I would say is we might be able to do something more with that. What I would say for right now, there's two kind of ideas I can think of. One would be to figure out a flag, for example, enterprise, that you want to use as kind of an indication that this is a long form, and you'd be able to like flag this as enterprise, and then you could actually do a block based on things with the enterprise flag and can pull those onto the front page. The other thing that you can do is there's actually a custom property called notes. So you could come in here and say note, and then say, I don't think that you should say long form probably, because I'm not sure if people know what that means, but you could say long form article or special, special long article or something. Special report or something. We do have a special report flag, so that might be something where you could say all of your long form articles are going to be flagged as special report. And then, I don't know if normal people know what long form means necessarily, I'm not sure. But you can flag them as special report, and then the special report actually shows a little flag note next to each of the articles in the flow. So you can see a little flag next to all of them. Or you can build a block to highlight those. And maybe you put one out per week, and then they will just constantly show on the front page and be updated every week.
Okay. From Deb Baker, if using paging gallery or any other special presentation mode, does each image then count as its own page view in analytics?
That's a good question. We actually were not able to do that in the very first release, but we are doing that in the next release. So probably by within the next 2 weeks or so, we will have that available. That you have to be set up using Google Analytics. That's the first requirement. And then when you do page through those articles or those pages, it's really mostly relevant to the paging gallery. The paging gallery will count those as additional page views in Google Analytics only. And that should be available in the next release.
Okay. From Alexandra Nicholas, for the long form feature, how would that work if you iframed a wider piece of content in like an interactive graphic? Or will there be a long form option on an HTML asset?
You can drag HTML assets inside of the long form as child assets. So I would recommend making an HTML asset child, and then you can drag that inside of the long form article. So for example, Twitter embeds or Instagram embed photos, things like that. You can add those as HTML assets and drag those in line.
Okay. From Jackie Gray, do the has preview and has parent query rule options work with link and HTML assets?
I believe so. Okay. They do have the option of having a preview. So if you have a preview tied to the link asset, that should work. That it will come up as a has preview. I didn't try that myself, but I think that would be a bug if it doesn't. So I'll say yes.
From Clay Lambert. Patrick just IM'd me and he says yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, they do. They do work.
I hate answering yes to something I didn't try myself, but yeah, that should do that.
Okay. From Clay Lambert, having trouble visualizing the query rules, can you show an example?
Luckily, I just brought that up, so I will show you how that works. So here's an example of the this is kind of a mega block showing it across the top of the page. And in this particular case, I want to make sure everything has a photo here, so I don't have anything. I mean, it does show when there's no photo, the block, it shows a little thing, but it doesn't look as cool as if you have a photo, obviously. So in this case, I've removed any other types of query rules so I can have any section, any type of asset, but my requirement is that I'll actually show you what this is like if you started. You say down here, this has preview or has parent. So in this case, I'm choosing has preview. You have the option that you're going to make sure that the query rule, the asset has preview or the asset does not have a preview. And then here's a little warning saying that the assets may not obey this rule until they are saved. So if you want to make sure that your top stories of the day today are working, you can resave them. Otherwise, when your new articles come out tomorrow, they automatically will have that saved with them. And now this changes, and actually I'll show you, you can see down here, I guess I don't have anything without a photo. If I show maybe, I'll have a couple of them on here. So here's one without a photo, but if I add that in there, it'll go away. So it'll require that they have a preview. And so now this will change, and it only shows things with photos. So that way, again, on your kind of specialty preview blocks, you can say anything with a photo can show up here. You can still obviously do other types of, only things from the sports section, only things with this keyword on them. You can do those additional rules as well. But this just makes sure that nothing without an image will show up in your main specialty blocks. For the other one, again, it has parent. So you can say this asset is the child of another, or this asset is not the child of another. And so you can set that only things that are not children will show up here. And then again, these are only my parent assets. So none of my photos, none of that stuff will show up in here. So hopefully that helps.
Another BLOX Total CMS question. Will the syndication tool be available from within Total CMS?
Yes, we are working on that. It is available in some situations now. We're working with some people on that for things like AP. But we are working more to do greater integration between those in the future.
Okay. Judy Bowers asks, do you need to be subscribed to some sort of syndication service or have a hub to use the new syndication tool?
Yes. Well, I mean, you have to have some kind of syndication set up to use it.
You have to have channels.
Right. So let me just show you. Go in a little bit more in depth into that. Just as an example, let me go here really quick. Oops. So if I go to syndication, and then in here I have a couple of different channels set up. In this case, I have an RSS feed into Google News about Montana elections. In this case, I've got a channel set up for the Lee Wire Hub. And then in this case, I've got a channel set up for YouTube. In this case, I chose pretty much all of YouTube, or you can set a specific channel. So if your organization has a YouTube channel where you post videos, you can set up a channel looking into your YouTube channel. So, and then you just come up here and you switch. I'm going to look at YouTube. This is actually looking, none of these assets are technically on your site at this time. You're looking into the YouTube, and you can actually select and choose any of these articles to pull onto your site. So now that you have these channels set up, if you're actually in your editorial system, you can say new asset from syndication, and then all of those channels are up here available. I'm still within the context of my editorial application. I can click on look at my channels here, and then actually go through and pull these onto my site very easily without having to go off into syndication. And then again, if I'm on a story, and I love this part, so I just want to show this really quick. I can say from here to look into syndication, I can do a search on YouTube for Chicago, let's say, and then I find a couple of things, I import them, I can add a section tag to them. So now these are technically added into my site, and they're in a queue to be added to my asset. So now I can choose to say Lee Wire, and again I can see if they have anything about Chicago, and there's a couple of things here. Import and add, again, add section tag. Then now that these are actually pulled into my site, but they're not yet associated to this article, I can drag and drop them, I can change the order of them, and at the very end, once they're all pulled in, I can click here at the bottom and say add to asset, and all of those become children of my asset in this particular order. So, and again, I never had to go into the syndication tool to do this. I can do it all from within editorial. If your staff doesn't have any syndication channels set up, feel free to call us and we can help you get, at the very least, you could have YouTube set up, you could have some, important RSS feeds set up, or you can look at doing syndication from within your organization. If you have multiple block sites or multiple papers, you can do blocks to block syndication. And then once those channels are set up, then you'll be able to come in here and choose, from syndication, and you'll have those channels set up for you to pull items from.
Okay, Patrick Dupree asks, if we're using the long form story presentation mode and insert an inline photo, will it carry the cut line attributed to the photo asset?
It does show the cut line. It only shows if you click on it. So you have to click on them, and then there's the cut line right there.
Okay. Jeff Evans asks, with syndication, is there any way to flag another site that their article may be of interest to another site? So I guess wants to be able to flag an article and say this may be of interest to this other site.
We would have to kind of work on the way that we flag things is through site tags. So we would have to work on it. We kind of have maybe thought about doing something like this, is maybe like a best of town news channel, and people could have a flag that says, I think this is really good, and I want to flag this as best of town news, and then all of those feed into a hub, and then people can pull them down at will. That sort of thing, if people are interested in that, feel free to talk to us, and we'll see, if we can get enough papers interested in doing something like that. But we'd love to look into those types of scenarios.
Patrick chimed in and said that they could also tag the articles.
Mm-hmm.
So
any type of search you can do can be a push to a hub site or a pull from a hub site.
Yeah, they could add a keyword and then search it through syndication, and that would work too. Okay.
Assuming the channels are set up.
Correct.
Right.
Jason Clark asks, do you have a download original photo button, so if we share a story from another site, we could also download the art to be able to run it in our print edition?
We don't have that yet. One of the things that we would need to figure out as part of this process is what permissions you have to that article and how you're going to use it, and how the original source site has permissions to set people to use it. So that part we still need to kind of figure out, how to set those things up and what the types of permissions people want are on those things. So that could be a feature later that allows you to do that for print, but that would probably be a later step.
This is Mark Wilson. I think part of the thing we have is the pipelines in place and the contents out there. We're going to have to work on digital rights management software, and probably end up, especially if you're going to do content exchanges outside of your own ownership group, to have an understanding and approval for what you can share. And because we have, some groups have rights to AP content and others don't, or we just end up with some digital rights management, and Patrick's already working on that, and he's going to have that done right away, Patrick, right?
Yeah.
But it's really exciting to be able to do these things, and we really want to work with some folks to see how to do it. We think the first place to start is to have your own channel per group, and then there's really no reason we can't have the different groups talking to each other if they all agree. But that gets into a little bit more of a digital rights and legal issues.
Okay. Jason Schaefer asks, can we see an example of the personality-focused presentation mode?
Let me see if I can.
It looks like a blog post, doesn't it? Similar
Yeah,
to
it's
a blog
basically an
presentation
article that has the person's bio up at the top. Let me see. So I think. Yeah. So this one is in personality format. And so you can see this is a normal article, and then up here I've got my bio pulled out on the top. This is also a series, so you can see these are the other articles in that series.
Okay. Matt Busey has a question about Touch 5. I think you sort of touched on this, but briefly, how will the new long-form article format appear in Touch 5? How about the new collection formats?
Yeah, at this time they look like regular collections and regular articles.
Okay. Let's see. Matthew Noonan asks, how will the new article presentation modes transfer to mobile pages? I think that's
Yeah,
a
it's the same
similar
thing.
concept. Nick Heyman, when presentation modes come to TCMS, to BLOX Total CMS, will inline image placements work with InDesign? Right now, placed images get overwritten.
I assume that would be the same. I don't think we're doing anything right now with that.
I think we'll have to get John Linders involved.
Yeah.
in that,
Okay.
Or Patrick maybe will answer that, but I think that's,
Okay. Yeah, we can follow up after.
Right.
Offline on that one. He also asks, will we get the ability to resize inline photos?
If that's not there right now, well, I'll have to see if that's something that we could do technically.
Okay. Jamie Albrecht asks, does the map collection use Google Maps, and if a location is way off on a map, can we manually fix the location beacon?
Yes, it's using Google Maps, and you can use, if you look at, I don't know if I have location on this one. Yeah, you can see here the latitude and longitude, and then this is how you can actually look at where it's placed. You can choose, if you have to figure out what the latitude and longitude is that's correct, and you can actually override whatever this is by putting in the correct latitude and longitude down there. So, and there's various sites that exist out there where you can, drag the pin onto a map or find a very specific Latin long, and then you can just copy out that Latin long and paste it in here, and it will use the Latin long over the actual address.
Andrea Holbrook asks, can a collection show as a parent asset?
Yes, a collection would be a parent. I think that's what that means.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, the collection would be a parent, and then the children of the collection would be children of the collection.
For collections, will the current gallery, slideshow, etc. presentations still exist? They didn't appear to be options in the new presentation modes.
So you said photo gallery?
Will the current gallery, slideshow, etc. presentations still exist?
Right. So the current presentation on collection assets is determined based on the kind of collections the kind of assets you have in the collection. So if you have all photos, it still shows in the same way that it does now. If you have, you could actually go in and change. And I'll show you kind of an example of that. You could go in and change a collection of all photos. You can change those to be page and gallery, or you could leave them the way it is now, and it will show in kind of a clicky photo gallery. And then again, if you have videos, those show up as a video gallery. If you have photos and stories, it creates kind of a special report page, and that's all in the normal collection presentation that we have right now. That is the none option on the asset, and that will continue to have the same behavior that it had previously.
Okay. Joe Hadsall asks, will these new presentation modes override existing presentation modes for other assets? For example, I select a masthead presentation mode for a photo.
For photos, the presentation modes are the same. So let's see here. So here's an example photo. So the photo is going to be in the masthead mode. That particular photo will show up as a masthead on the article the same way. So now, I guess if you're asking if you have a masthead photo presentation on a long form article presentation, yes, it will try to do the same thing. There might be a couple of varying situations where it might try to, again, because we depend a lot in long form on inline, and so we're really hoping that to do the long form that you're dragging stuff inline, and I'll show you kind of just an example of what that looks like. So here's that kind of shirt long form article that I had, and you can scroll down and you can see that I actually have all these different photos over here, and I've dragged them in line so that they show up throughout the context of the article. If these were not in line, then it would be, it looks like a little bit of a different page, but it will have a couple of things in line, and then it still has that mini rail so you can see those. I'll try to show, I guess I could remove one of these really quick. And show what that looks like. So in this case, I have a mini rail over here on the right-hand side that shows my non-inline assets, and then I still have my assets over here. So, and it still has the inline long form ad here, but it also has the in-story ad here, but you see that there's no other of the normal, this is not a normal rail over here.
Okay. Amy Sweeney asks, when we do slideshows and collections, the captions are very small and our slug comes in as the title. Will that be changed?
The title of the photo is the title that shows on the page. So if you want, and by default we require a title, so if you do not provide a title, we use the slug of the image, or the file name of the image. If you want to have something other than that as your title, you need to write something as the title.
Okay. Michael Becker asks, is there a max height for images in the long form presentation, or should we avoid using portrait orientation photos because of their height?
Yes, there is not a height set to that, so if you wanted to make sure that they were smaller, you could crop them or do that kind of thing.
Okay. Nick Hanen asks, regarding, you noted that you can use the note custom property. Where does the note custom property text appear on the article?
It doesn't appear on the article itself, only on the front page.
Sarah Wilson asks, can you show me which button you select long form from? It was hard to tell in the screenshot.
Just right here.
Okay.
Right, it says presentation.
Okay, Jackie Gray asks, I believe this has to do with paging galleries. She said, count as page views, but do they serve a new ad on the new page view?
No, the refreshable ads are not working yet. We are still working on that though.
Okay. Jason Clark asks, if an article has a child image but the image is set to do not publish, will the article show in the rules set to only show with preview?
I am not sure. I don't think that it would, but I haven't tried that personally.
Okay.
I don't know if Patrick can chime in on that or not, but I'm not sure.
Okay, another asset has preview question. With the asset has preview query rule, will it deselect if an asset has a child photo that has do not publish checked? So it's a similar question.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Deb Baker asks, do you have any examples of newspaper groups using the syndication hub or examples of how it works?
Yeah, we've got a lot. We've got probably 5 or 10 places that it's using a channel internally right now. Lee is, CNHI, Schurz, and you know they're honestly using them in very different ways. Some people are posting most of their content and then pulling down individual things. Some people are just posting the best of or the really enterprise stories and then pulling in all of them or individuals. So they can be used in many different ways.
If there's a group, anyone particularly interested in the syndication, let us know. We'll kind of pull a user group together just to try to figure out how we can work together.
Yeah, along those lines, Rick Simpson has asked if we can offer a webinar that concentrates exclusively on syndication. And we have done something like that in the past, but it now has a lot more features and stuff, so that maybe is something we should talk about doing. Amanda August asks, can we pull videos from YouTube to be assets on their own and not just a child asset?
Yes. You can even set up a automatic importer that automatically pulls things from, if you have a YouTube channel, you can automatically pull items through syndication into your page with no manual intervention by setting up what's called an importer within syndication.
Okay. James Robertson asks, will the syndication tool be available on BLOX Go? BLOX Go is our mobile reporting tool. I guess he's wondering if he'll see a mobile-friendly version of the syndication tool.
Yeah, I mean, right now, BLOX Go is mostly for, posting articles, not really doing the editorial work, so it's not really available there.
Okay. Tom Rist asks when these features will be released, and they are tentatively scheduled. They should go out next week. They're tentatively scheduled for release next week, I believe. Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesday, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But that's those are always tentative, pending, if any issues arrive during that time.
Okay, Tom also asks, will you be adding the ability to geotag more than one location in an article asset, since you can use each article asset to tag a map in a collection now? So more than one geolocation on an article asset.
That's not currently roadmapped, but we could talk about that. Right now, it's basically each article or each asset would indicate an item on the timeline or on the map itself, as opposed to multiples.
Okay. Jason Schaefer asks, can the presentation mode on articles be assigned on emailed content importer?
No, that's not available right now other than breaking news. But if you have a specific use case for that, feel free to submit a ticket and we can look at that.
Patrick Smiley says, so text will still not wrap around to inline photos on long form?
Correct.
Okay.
And a question, just to reiterate what the presentation modes will look on Touch 5.
We don't have, they show up as normal articles.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and just to clarify that, they already have a different display. They don't have the right rail. They don't have, the ads and stuff on the right-hand side. So all of that is different already in terms of Touch 5. It's already kind of a single column of text. So, having a long-form article might already look like it does on Touch 5 already. So the question is more, do you do a timeline on a mobile phone, or how would that whole thing work? And we're still seeing if there's some use cases for that, but right now they're just basically regular articles or regular collections, which is just a list of the content.
Judy Bowers asks, when will all of this be available, and do we need to do something special with AdRep or support to add these features? It should all be available next week, and I believe in the case of all these features, you'll automatically get them.
Right. You do have to be on our updated templates. So if you have a situation where you have turned off the automatic updates, or you're for some reason not getting the template updates, you'll see the new software available, so you'll see the new modes, but they might not work on the front end unless you have the new templates.
Would you like me to mention that? Mm-hmm. Okay. And let's see. Kayla Castile with CNHI actually just chimed in and said, if anybody has questions about how CNHI is using the syndication hub, feel free to contact her, and her email address is kcastile@cnhi.com. That's KCASTILLE@cnhi.com.
If we do a webinar on that, we might get Christine and maybe get Bob Rose and some others just helping
To talk about
how they're
doing.
using it. Yeah, that would be great. Looks like we've got one more question here. Jason Clark asks, should flags on assets come across on syndication?
Most of the time, I don't think they do right now, but you could reapply them, obviously. We would be worried that if you flag something as breaking news or top story and you pull that into your site, that might not be breaking news or a top story anymore. So we don't want to kind of have their stuff like pop into your front page or pop into your breaking news without you specifically making that decision. So as of right now, those things don't pull over, but you could just reapply them in terms of what it means, because obviously a top story on another site might not be the same top story on your site. It could be more regional or something like that. So you'd have to reapply those flags and keywords. But you can do, when you pull something in with syndication, just as a quick example, you actually do have the opportunity, when you add it to your site, to add flags, geolocations, and keywords at the time that you're pulling it into your site. So you could kind of reestablish those as you pull them in.
Okay, one more question just came in from Nick Heyman. I believe you answered this earlier, but with the has preview query rule, will it deselect if an asset has a child photo that has do not publish checked?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Well, we can certainly check on that and drop him an email.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Patrick is chiming in. Anyway, so I think that is all of our questions. That was a great selection of questions, and we powered through them. Good job, Christine.
Thank you.
That was a marathon. If you want to go to the final slide. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time, and we're doing these webinars on the first Thursday of each month. Again, if you want to receive our webinar notifications, go to the TOWNNEWS.com site, click on news, and in the upper right-hand corner you can sign up for this and other notifications and newsletters. But thank you very much. We appreciate your time. See you next month.
Thank you.